Rolls-Royce makes some of the most expensive cars in the world, and yet the company was founded by a boy who grew up in poverty, with almost no education. Picture this: a boy with dreams bigger than his empty pockets, growing up without the luxury of a proper education. Yet believe it or not, this very boy would go on to create Rolls-Royce, crafting some of the most sought-after cars on the planet, and building a company worth a jaw-dropping $48.31 billion. Makes you wonder, doesn't it? How did he turn a mere 20 pounds into $1 million empire? Our story begins in 1863. Little Henry enters the world, and his folks, James and Mary, are running a flour mill that's barely hanging on. Fast forward 4 years, and their world turns upside down. So, with hope as their only baggage, they head to London in search of a new start. Even at 4 years old, Henry is no stranger to hard work. He's out there in the fields, scaring birds away for just a few pennies each week. And just when you think things can't get any tougher, they do. Henry's dad passes away when he's only 9. It's a crushing blow that sends their financial struggles into a tailspin. School is no longer an option for Henry as he steps up to work full-time, selling newspapers, delivering telegrams, all for just a few cents each. Times were tough, and his mom, overwhelmed with debt, made the heart-wrenching decision to send him off to live with an elderly couple who were just scraping by themselves. Some days, Henry's only meal was a slice of bread dipped in milk. It was a hard-knock life that took its toll on his health for years to come. By 15, Henry had barely seen the inside of a classroom, but his aunt stepped in, scraping together enough for him to start an apprenticeship with the Great Northern Railway Company. It meant another move for Henry, and while his aunt could cover the apprenticeship fee, she couldn't afford his housing. Fortune smiled on Henry, though. He met with George Arrow, whose son was also learning the railway ropes. George took the boys under his wing, teaching them the tricks of the trade each night. Henry was captivated by the craft. He would spend hours perfecting his skills, and even as just a teen, he was crafting intricate brass model wheelbarrows that were nothing short of art. Education might have eluded him, but Henry had a knack for working with his hands and a work ethic that wouldn't quit. But apprenticeships cost money, and 3 years in, his aunt's funds ran dry. At 17, Henry found himself at a tool-making company in Leeds, earning just 1 penny an hour. He didn't stay put for long, though. Next up was the Electric Light and Power Company in Liverpool. There, he outworked everyone, often skipping meals to tinker with electronics instead. After bouncing between jobs and pinching pennies, Henry finally saved enough to take electrical engineering classes at night at the City and Guilds Institutes. It was a game changer for him, a chance to turn his raw talent into something big. At the age of 19, Henry Royce landed what felt like the golden ticket, a gig as chief electrician at the Maxim Western Electric Company. It was a glimmer of hope, a sign that maybe, just maybe, his luck was turning. But in 1884, fate threw another curveball. The company went under, and Henry was back to square one. You'd think after so many setbacks, Henry might throw in the towel. But no, he had a different plan. He wasn't about to spend his life hopping from job to job. He wanted more. He wanted riches. He wanted success. So, he set out to start his own business. Convincing others to join you when you're down on your luck isn't easy. But Henry had a way about him. His buddy, Ernest, saw the fire in Henry's eyes and decided to take the leap with him. Together, they started FH Royson and Company in 1884 with just 20 pounds from Henry and 50 from Ernest. They set up shop on Cook Street in Manchester, living in a cramped room above a store. Times were so tough they lived off sandwiches every day. The odds stacked against them, but Henry had never been one to back down from a challenge. With grit and determination, they crafted their first hit, the electric doorbell. It was a hit, and soon Henry was burning the midnight oil, crafting bell after bell for eager customers. From there, it was like a snowball rolling downhill, generators, electric cranes, you name it. By 1897, they had orders worth £6,000, A year later, that number quadrupled. And by 1899, their share capital hit £30,000. That's over $1 million today. But even with all that success, Henry's mind was already racing ahead to his next big dream, crafting the most luxurious car the world had ever seen. And as their fortunes rose, so did their personal lives. Henry and Ernest weren't just business partners, they were best friends. And in a twist of fate that seemed almost too perfect, they married sisters, Edith and Minnie, turning their partnership into family. The triumph of their electrical goods venture had set the stage for Henry to dream bigger, to reach further. In an era when cars were a rarity, Henry Royce was already ahead of the curve, purchased a used 1901 French car. It was a fixer-upper that wouldn't even start, but within a day, Henry had it purring like a kitten. Yet he didn't stop there. He kept tweaking, improving, until he realized he could do one better. He could build his own car. And so he did. By 1904, Henry had crafted 3 cars from scratch, dubbing them the Royce 10. One was his pride and joy, another went to his partner Ernest, and the third? It caught the eye of a man so taken with it that he introduced Henry to Charles Rolls. When Charles Rolls met Henry Royce, it was like two worlds colliding. Henry's life had been a scrappy fight from rags to riches, while Charles, born into nobility in 1877, had known luxury from the cradle. But beneath their different veneers, Charles Rolls was no stranger to mechanics. As a kid, he had earned the nickname Dirty Rolls for his love of tinkering. He'd studied at Cambridge and even worked on yachts and railways. But cars were his true passion. He'd been one of the UK's first car owners, proudly posing with his Peugeot at just 18 years. Little did they know, this meeting would mark the beginning of an iconic partnership and the birth of the Rolls-Royce legacy. Charles Rolls' passion for cars was so infectious that his father bankrolled him to open his own dealership, C's Rosenco, where he imported French cars for the English elite. Charles wasn't just a salesman, he was a legend on the racetrack, holding an unofficial land speed record at a blistering 83 miles per hour. Sure, by today's standards that might not raise eyebrows, but back then, it was nothing short of revolutionary. But Charles was more than just fast cars. He was an adrenaline junkie. He raced in the perilous Paris to Madrid race of 1903, where the dust kicked up by the cars and the eager spectators stepping onto the track turned it into chaos. Yet Charles thrived in this mayhem, racing year after dangerous year. And if land wasn't enough, Charles took to the skies. He was a pioneering aviator, with over 170 balloon flights under his belt, and the honor of being Britain's second licensed pilot. He even soared through the air in a Wright Flyer over 200 times. So when Charles Rolls first laid eyes on Henry Royce's two-cylinder Royce 10, he was skeptical. His heart belonged to 3- and 4-cylinder engines. But one ride in Henry's creation changed everything. The quality, the craftsmanship, it was undeniable. That night, Charles couldn't contain his excitement. He rushed to his business partner and declared his excitement and joy. In the winter of 1904, 2 men from worlds apart, Henry Royce and Charles Rolls, shook hands on a venture that would change history. Rolls-Royce was born. Henry's hands were calloused from a life of toil, having clawed his way out of poverty. Charles, with his youthful 27 years, had known privilege from birth, a stark contrast to Henry's 41 years. Together, they were a force to be reckoned with. Henry's genius lay in crafting electronics and mechanics to near perfection. Charles, on the other hand, he was a savvy businessman with a knack for marketing and PR. Charles leveraged his high society connections, tapping into politics, media, and even royalty to find buyers for their luxury cars. It was this blend of street smarts and sophistication that made them an unstoppable pair. Their debut? The Rolls-Royce 10 GP at the Paris Salon, later known as the Paris Motor Show. Priced at £395 each, a small fortune by today's standards, they crafted just 16 of these beauties. One fetched a staggering £3.2 million at a 2007 auction. But it was their second marvel, the Rolls-Royce Silver Ghost, that truly turned heads in 1906. With its silver and aluminum sheen, and a whisper-quiet engine so smooth it could balance a cup of water, without spilling a drop during an endurance run, it earned the title the best car in the world. To this day, the Silver Ghost remains one of the most coveted cars, with one insured for an eye-watering $35 million in 2005. Once Rolls-Royce had revved its engines in the automobile world, making a name for their opulent cars, Charles, ever the aviator at heart, pitched the idea of airplane engines to Henry. But Henry was a car man through and through. He politely declined, preferring to keep his feet on the ground and his focus on four wheels. Charles's love for flight couldn't be grounded, though. With Rolls-Royce soaring, he found himself with more time to take to the skies. Eventually, he stepped down as technical director to chase his true passion, flying. Charles often quipped he preferred the air to the roads. After all, there were no traffic cops up in the clouds. In the year 1909, Charles Rolls made history with his own Wright Flyer, becoming the first soul to complete a non-stop round trip across the English Channel. The press hailed him as the day's greatest hero, but fate had a cruel twist in store. During an air show in 1910, amidst ferocious winds, Charles pushed his plane beyond its limits. Tragically, he became Britain's first aviation casualty at just 32 years of age. A year on from this loss, Henry Royce's health waned. The toll of relentless work, poor diet, and little rest caught up with him. The factory floor saw less of him as he retreated home. Yet, undeterred by his frailty, Henry continued to pour his genius into Rolls-Royce, drafting designs from the quiet of his room. Despite Henry's initial refusal to venture into aviation, the beginning of the First World War left him no choice. Rolls-Royce answered the call to arms with the Eagle engine in 1914, powering half of the Allied aircraft. The demand for their cars also skyrocketed. By 1921, they faced a 3-year order backlog, prompting the opening of a new factory in Springfield, Massachusetts. In a decade, they rolled out 2,944 cars, a proof to their commitment to quality over quantity. A philosophy that endures even to this day, with each vehicle taking up to 6 months of handcrafted precision to complete. In 1930, Henry Royce's dedication was honored with the Order of the British Empire and a baronetcy. But even as his health failed him, he worked tirelessly until his last breath at age 70. His final designs were sketched from his deathbed. On the eve of his passing, Henry Royce sketched an adjustable shock absorber on an envelope, his final spark of genius. He entrusted it to his nurse. But he departed this world before his vision could take shape. The legacy of these two pioneers, Rolls and Royce, stretches far beyond their time. The company they built continues to be a byword for luxury, with a valuation towering over $48.31 billion. Their story is one of the power of hard work and determination, no matter one's beginnings. Henry Royce once said, "Strive for perfection. Take the best that exists and make it better. If it doesn't exist, create it." And that's precisely what they did, creating a legacy that turned dreams into reality. Thanks for watching this video. Please like and share this video. Subscribe to Fireside Tales for other more fascinating tales.